The world of the Vikings was harsh and unforgiving, where survival in the rugged landscapes of Scandinavia required not only strength but an intricate understanding of the spiritual world. The Norse people, with their deep connection to nature, gods, and the mysteries of life, saw sleep as something far beyond mere rest. To them, it was a sacred act, one that tied them to the divine and the cosmos. This opening section invites the listener into the Viking Age, a time when every part of life, including sleep, was intertwined with spiritual significance. In modern times, sleep is often seen as a biological function, a necessary reprieve from the demands of our waking hours. We rely on sleep to recover physically and mentally, viewing it as a temporary disconnection from the world around us. But for the Vikings, sleep was something far more profound. It was a gateway, a liminal space where the soul ventured beyond the confines of the physical world. To the Norse, the boundaries between the living and the dead, between the material and the spiritual, were fluid, and sleep acted as a bridge, offering glimpses into realms beyond ordinary perception. This contrast between modern views of sleep and the Vikings' spiritual understanding immediately piques the curiosity of the listener, setting the tone for an exploration of ancient beliefs that were as mysterious as they were profound. The Vikings lived in a time when the cold, vast expanse of nature seemed to have its own rhythm, a rhythm that was intimately tied to their survival. The long winters, where the sun barely graced the sky, and the brief summers, where the world was alight with daylight, created an environment where sleep played a central role in their lives. The rhythms of day and night, of life and death, were inescapable. But while sleep was an inevitable part of life, it was not something to be taken lightly. In Viking society, sleep was often seen as a moment of spiritual transition, a state where one's consciousness could leave the body and travel to realms unseen. Sleep, as the Vikings understood it, was far from the simple biological function we often reduce it to today. It was a state of heightened spiritual awareness, a time for the soul to leave the physical body and journey to the realms of the gods, the ancestors, and beyond. In their worldview, the soul was not confined to the body in the way we might think. Instead, it was a dynamic, multi-layered essence that could leave the body during sleep, travel through different worlds, and return with insights, wisdom, or even prophecies. The Viking understanding of the soul was not static but fluid, constantly moving, growing, and interacting with the universe. Imagine for a moment that you are living in the Viking Age. The night has fallen, and the world outside is still, save for the howling winds and the occasional crack of ice. You lie down to rest, your body exhausted from a day of toil. But for you, sleep is not just an escape from the day's labors. As your eyelids grow heavy and the world around you fades into darkness, your soul begins its journey. You are no longer just a body lying on a bed of straw. You are a traveler, moving between worlds, guided by forces unseen. The boundary between the living and the dead begins to blur, and in this space, anything is possible. This is how the Vikings viewed sleep, not as a mundane necessity but as a spiritual voyage, a moment when the soul could move freely between the realms. Their beliefs were shaped by a rich tapestry of mythology, where gods, spirits, and ancestors played active roles in the lives of the living. These figures weren't distant, otherworldly beings but were deeply intertwined with daily life. The gods walked among the Vikings, communicated with them through dreams and visions, and guided them in their sleep. The Vikings, ever pragmatic yet deeply spiritual, believed that their very souls could take part in this divine dance. As we begin to understand the Viking worldview, we must also recognize that it was a deeply interconnected cosmology. The universe, in the Viking mind, was a complex web of interconnected realms. At the center of this web stood Yggdrasil, the world tree, a colossal ash tree that connected all 9 realms of existence. These realms were not just distant, abstract places but were actively involved in the daily lives of the Vikings. They believed that the boundaries between these realms were porous, especially when the soul was at rest. In sleep, the soul could travel from one realm to another, exploring realms of gods and spirits, or even communing with the dead. At night, when the body was still, the soul could embark on a journey to the land of the gods, to Valhalla, or to the mysterious Helheim, the realm of the dead. These trips were not the stuff of simple dreams but were seen as genuine spiritual adventures, experiences that could influence the waking world. It was not unusual for a Viking to awaken from sleep with vivid memories of their journey, bringing back prophetic dreams or messages from the gods. These dreams were often seen as direct communications from the divine, and interpreting them was a task reserved for the wise, the shamans, or the seers. But not all of the realms the soul visited during sleep were benevolent. Just as the gods could reach out to the soul, so could the spirits of the dead and other supernatural beings. The Vikings believed that there were dangers in the spirit world, evil spirits, mischievous forces, and dark gods that could influence the soul during its travels. This belief led to rituals and protections designed to guard the sleeping body and soul. Amulets, charms, and sacred symbols were placed near the bed, and certain rituals were performed to ensure the soul's safe passage through the night. The Vikings, in their pragmatic way, were always prepared for both the sacred and the dangerous elements of the spiritual world. In this section, we've laid the foundation for understanding the Viking view of sleep as something far more than a simple biological process. Sleep was a sacred, transformative experience. The Viking soul was believed to leave the body during sleep, traveling to distant realms and returning with knowledge, wisdom, and sometimes warnings. The rituals, beliefs, and stories surrounding sleep in Viking culture tell us much about how they understood the world, the gods, and the forces that shaped their lives. As we continue to explore the Vikings' understanding of sleep and the soul, we'll delve deeper into their cosmology, their gods, and the powerful connection they felt between the waking world and the spirit world. But for now, let us linger in the quiet stillness of the night, where the soul stirs and prepares for its journey. The Viking worldview was a complex tapestry woven together by gods, spirits, and the forces of nature. Their cosmos was not a simple, linear existence. It was a layered, intricate structure, with realms that connected in ways far beyond what we might imagine today. These realms, conceived as different layers of existence, were connected by Yggdrasil, the great world tree. This massive ash tree stood at the center of the universe, its roots and branches stretching through the 9 realms, forming a web of connections that made up the Viking understanding of the universe. Each of these realms represented a different aspect of life, death, and the mysteries in between. Yggdrasil, towering and ever-present, symbolized the link between all existence, physical, spiritual, and divine. Its branches reached into the heavens, while its roots extended deep into the underworlds. To the Vikings, this tree was the axis around which everything turned. It was a bridge between worlds, a pathway for the soul, especially when it was freed from the body during sleep. This cosmic tree stood as the central axis of their belief system, much like a portal between realms, where the soul could travel during slumber. The connection between the physical world and the divine or the otherworldly was not something remote for the Vikings. It was ever-present, ever-available, and sleep was the key to unlocking these realms. The 9 realms themselves were not isolated from one another but were interconnected in a web-like pattern. These realms spanned the spectrum from the most divine and sacred to the most dangerous and chaotic. At the center was Midgard, the world of humans, the earthly realm where the Vikings lived, fought, loved, and dreamed. Midgard, while central to Viking life, was not viewed as the only or even the most important realm. The other realms, each with its own distinct characteristics, were equally crucial in understanding the soul's journey through life and afterlife. Above Midgard, reaching into the heavens, was Asgard, the realm of the gods, home to the mighty Aesir, including Odin, Thor, and Frigg. Asgard was a place of power, wisdom, and divine influence. It was said that the gods watched over the world from their palaces in Asgard, controlling the forces of nature and fate. During sleep, it was believed that the soul could journey to Asgard either by divine invitation or through dreams and visions. For the Vikings, Asgard was not a distant place, separated by time and space. It was an active, living realm that the soul could visit during its nightly wanderings. In this sense, sleep was not merely a period of rest. It was a spiritual gateway through which the soul could communicate with the divine, a place where prophecies were delivered and guidance was received. Below Midgard lay several other realms, each with its own purpose and significance. One of these was Jotunheim, the land of the giants, home to the Jotnar, or the ancient enemies of the gods. Jotunheim was a realm of chaos and untamed nature, filled with wild landscapes and beings that represented the forces of destruction and disorder. The giants were often seen as adversaries to the gods, but their role in the Viking understanding of the cosmos was far more complex. The Vikings believed that in sleep, the soul might wander into Jotunheim, encountering these primal forces. The giants, with their immense power and wisdom, were not only enemies but also sources of valuable knowledge. In dreams or sleep-induced visions, a Viking might encounter the giants, who could impart deep insights or warn of impending danger. To the Vikings, these realms were not abstract or distant. They were actively involved in their daily lives. The gods and giants were real, living forces, capable of influencing both the physical and spiritual realms. The idea that one's soul could travel to these realms during sleep was a common belief. In fact, many Viking warriors saw their dreams as prophetic, visions that offered guidance or warnings about their future. Whether the dreams came from the gods, the giants, or the ancestors, they were seen as direct communications from the realms beyond. This belief made sleep a powerful and sacred time, where every dream had the potential to change a Viking's fate. Yet, not all the realms were places of divine power or chaos. Below the realm of Midgard and Jotunheim lay Helheim, the land of the dead. This was a dark, cold place where the souls of the deceased would dwell, ruled by the goddess Hel, daughter of Loki. Unlike the fiery, eternal glory of Valhalla, Helheim was not a realm of honor or valor. Instead, it was a place of rest and reflection, where the souls of those who did not die in battle were destined to live for eternity. For the Vikings, Helheim was an inevitable part of life, a place that the soul might journey to after death, but also one that could be visited during sleep. In dreams, a Viking might encounter spirits of the deceased, or even receive glimpses into their own fate in Helheim, as death was always just beyond the horizon. This journey between realms was not just limited to the dead or the divine. In the Viking worldview, the world of spirits and ancestors was also deeply interconnected with the living. Spirits of the ancestors could be called upon, and their wisdom was considered crucial for guiding the living. The Vikings believed that during sleep, the soul could connect with these spirits, either in dreams or in a state of trance. In many ways, the spirit world was just as real to the Vikings as the material world. The afterlife wasn't a distant, abstract concept, but a place where the soul could interact with those who had come before, seeking wisdom, guidance, and protection. The interconnectedness of these realms formed the basis of the Viking understanding of existence. Sleep was not merely the time for the body to rest, it was the time when the soul could transcend the boundaries of the physical world and journey through these realms. Whether the soul was traveling to Asgard for divine guidance, wandering through Jotunheim to learn from the giants, or seeking messages from the ancestors in Helheim, sleep was the moment when the soul ventured beyond the body's limits. For the Vikings, the world was a living, breathing entity, constantly shifting and changing. The 9 realms were not separate, isolated worlds, but overlapping forces that interacted with each other. The very idea of boundaries between realms was fluid, whether in waking life or sleep. During sleep, the soul could transcend these boundaries, accessing realms that were not otherwise visible or reachable. In this sense, the Viking understanding of sleep was deeply tied to their cosmology. The soul's journey was not just a personal experience but a cosmic one, influenced by the ever-shifting forces of the gods, giants, and spirits. In this context, the soul's journey through sleep is not just a passive experience but an active, transformative one. Sleep becomes a time of cosmic travel, where the soul enters realms beyond the physical, communicating with the divine, the spirits, and the ancestors. The Viking worldview, with its rich mythology and spiritual depth, imbues sleep with a profound sense of purpose. It is not simply a moment of rest, but a time when the soul explores the universe, seeking wisdom, guidance, and understanding from the forces that shape existence. To the Vikings, the soul was not a singular, static entity but a complex, multifaceted essence that played a dynamic role in both the physical and spiritual realms. Their understanding of the soul was rooted in the belief that it was composed of different layers, each with its own purpose, function, and journey. These various layers interacted with each other in ways that were both mysterious and profound. The concept of the soul was central to Viking spirituality and was directly connected to their view of sleep, death, and the afterlife. The belief that the soul could travel beyond the body during sleep, journeying through realms of gods, giants, and ancestors, was intricately tied to the layers that made up the soul itself. One of the key elements of Viking soul belief was the notion that the soul was composed of several different components, each with its own distinct qualities and roles. These layers were not separate in the way we might think of different parts of a person's psyche, but rather were integral parts of a unified whole. The Vikings viewed the soul as something that could leave the body during sleep, travel through the cosmos, and return with knowledge or insights, depending on which aspect of the soul was at the forefront during that journey. One of the primary components of the Viking soul was the huger, which could be described as the conscious mind, or the emotional essence of a person. The huger was deeply tied to a person's thoughts, desires, and willpower. It was the part of the soul that experienced emotions, made decisions, and acted in the world. The Vikings believed that the huger was most active during waking hours, guiding the person's actions and interactions with the world around them. However, the huger was also believed to be capable of traveling during sleep. The soul's emotional and conscious essence could venture beyond the body while the person rested, engaging with the divine, ancestors, or even other beings in different realms. During sleep, the huger could leave the body and journey through the 9 realms, navigating the complexities of the Viking cosmology. It was believed that when the huger traveled during sleep, it could receive messages from the gods or ancestors. These dreams and visions were often seen as direct communications, and the Viking soul's connection to these messages was seen as a vital part of their spiritual journey. The huger might bring back prophetic dreams, warnings, or guidance that could influence a person's decisions or understanding of their place in the world. The fact that the soul could access such insights during sleep was a testament to the Vikings' belief that the boundaries between the physical and spiritual realms were not fixed but constantly shifting. But the huger was not the only component of the soul. The fylgja, often described as a spiritual double or guide, was another essential aspect of the Viking soul. The fylgja was seen as a manifestation of a person's true nature or spirit, often depicted as an animal or some other form that represented the individual's character or destiny. The fylgja was not something that was confined to the body, but rather existed alongside it, guiding the person through life and the afterlife. This spiritual guide was believed to be especially active during sleep, where it could protect the soul or offer insight and guidance during its travels through the realms. The fylgja was closely connected to a person's fate and destiny, and many Vikings believed that encountering their fylgja in dreams was a sign of an important spiritual connection or a powerful moment of insight. In the Viking worldview, the fylgja was not just a passive guide, but an active participant in the soul's journey. During sleep, the fylgja would travel alongside the soul, offering protection, wisdom, and guidance through the various realms. The fylgja was believed to be a key figure in the soul's journey through death, as it would lead the soul to its final resting place, whether that was Valhalla, Helheim, or another realm. The bond between the fylgja and the individual was seen as deeply sacred, and the presence of the fylgja in dreams or visions was considered a powerful spiritual experience. Another critical aspect of the Viking soul was the and, which can be thought of as the breath of life or the vital force that animated the body. The and was what made a person alive and connected them to the spiritual energy of the universe. It was the source of vitality, strength, and energy, and it was believed to be intimately connected with the physical body. The and was particularly important in the context of sleep because it was thought that while the body rested, the and could be replenished and renewed, allowing the soul to regain strength for the challenges of the waking world. The and was considered the life force that maintained the connection between the body and the soul, and in death, it was believed to return to the greater flow of cosmic energy, contributing to the eternal cycle of life and death. The and was also tied to the act of breathing, and it was said that a person's last breath, the moment of their death, was a crucial point in the journey of the soul. The final breath marked the departure of the and from the body, and with it, the soul began its journey to the afterlife. This understanding of breath and vitality was central to the Viking perspective on death and sleep, as it was believed that sleep allowed the on to return to a state of balance and harmony, much like the cycle of life and death. Another key component of the Viking soul was the life, the essence of life itself. The life was closely tied to a person's physical health and well-being, representing their strength and resilience. It was believed that the life could be influenced by external forces, such as the actions of others or the interference of spirits. During sleep, the life was considered to be in a state of renewal and restoration, as the soul rested and replenished itself. In this way, sleep was seen as a vital time for healing, both physically and spiritually, as the soul could restore its connection to the physical body and the forces of the cosmos. These layers of the soul, the huger, fylgja, and lif, were not separate entities but interwoven aspects of the same soul. Together, they represented the holistic nature of the Viking spirit, one that was both deeply connected to the physical world and deeply spiritual. The Vikings believed that sleep provided the soul with an opportunity to explore these different facets of itself, whether it was the conscious mind of the huger, the spiritual guide of the fylgja, the vital energy of the ond, or the life essence of the lif. Each of these layers was capable of traveling through the realms, interacting with gods, spirits, and ancestors, and returning with messages or knowledge that could influence the waking world. In this way, the Viking soul was a dynamic and fluid entity, constantly evolving and interacting with the universe. Sleep, for the Vikings, was not merely a time for rest, but a time for the soul to reconnect with itself and the greater cosmos. It was a sacred, transformative journey, one that allowed the soul to explore its many layers, engage with the divine, and return to the body with newfound wisdom and insight. The complexities of the Viking soul offer us a glimpse into a worldview that saw every aspect of life, every breath, every dream, and every sleep, as part of a greater, interconnected whole. The soul's journey during sleep was not only a spiritual adventure but a vital part of the ongoing dance between the physical and spiritual realms. In the Viking worldview, sleep was not simply the absence of wakefulness. It was a sacred transition, a moment when the soul could separate from the body and venture beyond the physical realm. Sleep was viewed as a doorway, an opening between the world of the living and the spiritual domains that lay beyond. To the Vikings, it was a time of profound importance, not merely for rest and rejuvenation but for spiritual connection, transformation, and exploration. Unlike our modern view of sleep as a routine biological necessity, the Vikings saw it as an essential part of their spiritual journey, a time when the soul had the opportunity to move freely through the realms, guided by the forces of fate and the divine. The concept of sleep as a sacred transition stems from the Viking belief in the fluidity between life and death. In their view, the boundaries between these states were not as rigid as they are in modern thought. Sleep was seen as a state that resembled death in many ways. A temporary death, perhaps, but a death nonetheless. In both states, the soul was free to wander, to leave the body behind and venture into other worlds. The transition from waking to sleep, therefore, was a powerful moment, a liminal space where the soul crossed the threshold between the mundane and the spiritual. For the Vikings, the transition to sleep was viewed as a moment of surrender, where the conscious mind let go of its hold over the body and allowed the deeper aspects of the soul to take the lead. This process of surrender was not seen as passive but as a conscious act of faith. By allowing the soul to leave the body and travel through the realms, the Viking embraced the unknown, trusting that the gods and spiritual forces would guide the journey. There was a sense of reverence surrounding sleep. It was not simply a time to recover from exhaustion but a moment of spiritual opening and connection to the divine. One of the key aspects of this sacred transition was the belief that sleep allowed the soul to travel to realms that were normally beyond human reach. The Vikings believed that the soul could leave the physical body behind and journey through the 9 realms, visiting places such as Asgard, the realm of the gods, or Helheim, the realm of the dead. These journeys were not limited to the dreams of the sleeping mind but were seen as real spiritual journeys, where the soul could interact with gods, ancestors, and spirits. The body remained behind, resting, but the soul was free to move through the cosmos, gaining wisdom, receiving messages, and experiencing the world beyond the material. This understanding of sleep as a transition was not confined to the moment of sleep itself. The Vikings saw the entire cycle of life as a series of transitions between different states of being. Birth, life, death, and rebirth were all part of a continuous flow, where the soul moved between the physical and spiritual realms, crossing thresholds and experiencing new realities. Death, in many ways, was seen as a final sleep, a transition into another realm, a permanent journey into the afterlife. The soul's journey through sleep was, in this sense, a rehearsal for death, a preparation for the ultimate transition from the living world to the world of the dead. For the Vikings, this spiritual journey during sleep was not just a passive experience. It was an active, transformative process. It was a time for the soul to engage with the divine, to seek guidance, and to receive messages from the gods or ancestors. Dreams were believed to be a direct communication from the spiritual realm, offering prophecies, warnings, and insights. Many Viking leaders and warriors consulted their dreams for guidance, believing that the gods spoke to them through their visions during sleep. In this sense, sleep was a crucial part of their decision-making process. The dream world was as real as the waking world, and the messages received during sleep could shape a Viking's actions and choices. But the sacredness of sleep was not only about divine messages or prophecies. It was also a time for healing and renewal. Just as the body needed rest to recover from the physical demands of the day, the soul needed rest to restore its connection with the cosmos. Sleep allowed the soul to realign itself with the spiritual world, to rejuvenate and replenish its energies. This was particularly important for the Vikings, whose lives were often marked by hardship, battle, and constant struggle. Sleep, as a spiritual process, offered them the opportunity to regain strength and clarity for the challenges ahead. It was a time to replenish the soul's vitality, to restore its bond with the divine, and to prepare for the physical and spiritual demands of the waking world. To facilitate this sacred transition, the Vikings performed various rituals and customs around sleep. These rituals were designed to protect the soul during its journey through the spiritual realms and ensure its safe return to the body upon waking. For example, it was common to use protective charms or amulets, which were believed to ward off evil spirits or unwanted forces that might interfere with the soul's journey. These objects acted as spiritual shields, guarding the sleeper from malevolent forces that could harm the soul while it was away from the body. Other rituals involved specific prayers or invocations, calling upon the gods or spirits for protection and guidance during the night. These practices reflected the deep reverence the Vikings held for the act of sleep, seeing it as a time of both vulnerability and immense spiritual potential. The importance of sleep in Viking culture extended beyond the individual. Communities often came together to observe collective rituals, especially during times of war or when preparing for significant events. Before battle, warriors would sometimes participate in communal rites, invoking the gods and ensuring that their souls would be protected during the night. These rites might include sacrifices, offerings, or chanting to ensure the warriors would be prepared for the spiritual journey they would undertake during sleep. The belief in the soul's ability to travel during sleep was so deeply ingrained in Viking culture that it was woven into every aspect of their lives, from the daily routines to the most important life events. The sacredness of sleep was also reflected in Viking literature, particularly in the sagas and poetry. Many of the greatest heroes and leaders in Viking stories are depicted as having prophetic dreams or spiritual visions during sleep. These dreams often provide them with crucial information or insights that influence their actions. The dream world, in these stories, is just as real and important as the waking world. For the Vikings, the connection between sleep and the divine was integral to their understanding of fate and destiny. They believed that the gods and the forces of the cosmos shaped the events of their lives, and sleep was one of the most direct ways they could receive guidance from these powerful forces. In contrast to modern Western society, where sleep is often treated as a purely physiological process, the Vikings saw sleep as an essential part of the spiritual fabric of the universe. It was a time for the soul to transcend the limitations of the body, to communicate with the divine, to receive wisdom, and to prepare for the challenges of life and death. Sleep was not a passive experience for the Vikings. It was an active, transformative journey that took the soul through the realms, interacting with gods, spirits, and ancestors. It was a sacred space where the boundaries between life and death, the physical and the spiritual, were fluid and ever-changing. Thus, sleep was not merely a time of rest but a crucial part of the Viking experience, a time for healing, guidance, and transformation. It was a journey that took the soul across the thresholds of existence, offering the opportunity to receive knowledge and insight that could shape both the waking world and the afterlife. In the Viking understanding, sleep was as much a part of life as waking, an essential, sacred transition that connected the human soul to the greater cosmic order. For the Vikings, sleep was more than just a respite from the demands of daily life. It was an essential part of the soul's journey. Sleep was viewed as a veil between the physical world of the living and the spiritual realms that lay beyond. This veil, thin and fragile, separated the waking world from a vast, unseen universe of gods, spirits, and ancestors. During sleep, the soul was believed to slip through this veil, venturing beyond the body and into the spiritual domains that the Vikings revered. The journey through this veil was not passive. It was an active, transformative process that connected the individual to the greater forces of fate, wisdom, and the divine. To understand this journey, we must first explore how the Vikings perceived the veil itself, the barrier between life and death, between the known and the unknown. The concept of the veil between worlds was deeply tied to the Viking understanding of the cosmos. The 9 realms, interconnected by the mighty Yggdrasil, formed the foundation of their spiritual beliefs. Each realm held its own significance, whether it was the sacred domain of Asgard, the dangerous and untamed land of Jotunheim, or the dark and mysterious afterlife realm of Helheim. These realms were not seen as distant or inaccessible. Rather, they were intricately woven into the very fabric of the Vikings' existence. They believed that the veil between the realms was not impermeable but permeable, especially during sleep. The soul, when freed from the confines of the physical body, could pass through this veil and travel across the realms, engaging with gods, spirits, and the ancestral past. The veil itself was not seen as a simple barrier. It was a dynamic, shifting threshold that changed depending on the time of day, the individual's fate, and the spiritual forces at play. During the day, when the soul was bound to the physical body, the veil was thick, obscuring the vision of the spiritual realms. But as night fell, the veil would grow thin, and the soul would be free to embark on its journey through the cosmos. This transition was not abrupt. It was a gradual process, where the boundaries between the waking world and the spirit world began to dissolve, allowing the soul to pass through. In sleep, the Vikings believed that the soul could visit many different realms, each with its own purpose. The journey was not a solitary one. The soul was guided by spiritual forces, gods, ancestors, or even the mighty Valkyries, who were said to escort the souls of fallen warriors to their final resting place in Valhalla. The journey of the soul during sleep was both a personal and cosmic event. On a personal level, it allowed the soul to gain wisdom, healing, or insight from the divine. On a cosmic level, it was a reaffirmation of the interconnectedness of all realms, a reminder that the soul's journey was part of a greater cycle of life, death, and rebirth. The soul's journey during sleep was believed to take it to several distinct realms. One of the most important was Asgard, the realm of the gods. Here, the soul might encounter Odin, Thor, Frigg, and other deities who could provide guidance or protection. Asgard was a place of divine order, where the laws of the universe were upheld and the forces of fate were carefully controlled. For the Vikings, Asgard represented the highest spiritual realm, a place where the soul could commune with the gods themselves. It was during sleep that the Vikings believed they could receive messages or warnings from these gods, often in the form of dreams or visions. These messages were not merely symbolic but were seen as direct communications from the divine realm, offering insights into the future or guidance in times of crisis. Yet, the journey of the soul did not always lead to the heavenly realms of Asgard. The soul, depending on its fate, might journey to realms that were darker or more mysterious. One such realm was Helheim, the land of the dead. Unlike the fiery halls of Valhalla, where the souls of warriors would fight and feast eternally, Helheim was a place of rest and reflection. It was ruled by the goddess Hel, daughter of Loki, and was the final resting place for those who did not die in battle. While many Vikings sought the glory of Valhalla, Helheim was not seen as a place of punishment but of peace. The soul's journey to Helheim during sleep was often associated with introspection and connection to the past. The Vikings believed that during sleep, the soul could communicate with ancestors who resided in Helheim, gaining wisdom and insight from those who had come before. In addition to Asgard and Helheim, the soul's journey could also take it to the land of the giants, Jotunheim. The giants, or Jotnar, were ancient beings who lived in a world of chaos and destruction. While they were often seen as enemies of the gods, the giants were also a source of great power and wisdom. The Vikings believed that the soul could travel to Jotunheim during sleep, where it could engage with these primal forces. In dreams, the soul might encounter giants who would offer cryptic messages or warnings, or provide guidance on how to overcome challenges in the waking world. Jotunheim, with its wild and untamed nature, represented the raw forces of existence, and the journey to this realm was often seen as a test of strength and resilience. The soul's journey was not always about guidance or wisdom. It was also about healing and restoration. The Vikings believed that sleep was a time for the soul to replenish its energy, restore its connection with the cosmos, and heal from the wounds of the waking world. Just as the body needed rest to recover from physical exertion, the soul required sleep to regenerate and renew itself. During this time, the soul might travel to realms of healing or undergo processes of spiritual purification. For instance, the soul might visit the realm of Niflheim, the land of mist and ice, where the primordial forces of creation resided. Here, it could find peace and rejuvenation, preparing for the challenges of the waking world. The veil between the worlds was also a space where the past and future could merge. During sleep, the soul was believed to have access to both the ancestral past and the future that had not yet come to pass. The soul might journey back through time to connect with ancestors, seeking their wisdom and guidance. The past was seen as a vital source of strength and knowledge, and the Vikings believed that by connecting with their ancestors in sleep, they could gain insight into their own lives and futures. At the same time, sleep allowed the soul to glimpse into the future through prophetic dreams or visions of what was yet to come. These glimpses were seen as powerful tools for decision-making, offering foresight into battles, journeys, and key events. For the Vikings, the journey of the soul during sleep was a deeply spiritual experience. It was a time when the boundaries between the physical and spiritual realms grew thin, allowing for a communion with the divine, the ancestral spirits, and the forces of fate. The journey through the veil was not simply a personal experience, it was a cosmic event, a reminder of the interconnectedness of all beings and all realms. The soul's passage through this veil was seen as essential to maintaining balance and harmony between the worlds. It was through this journey that the Vikings believed they could access the wisdom, strength, and guidance needed to face the challenges of life. In this way, sleep became much more than a biological necessity for the Vikings. It was a sacred space, a time for the soul to transcend the limitations of the physical world and engage with the larger cosmic order. The journey through the veil was not just a passage of time, it was a profound spiritual event that shaped the Vikings' understanding of their place in the world and their connection to the forces that govern the universe. Through this journey, they found the strength, wisdom, and purpose to live their lives with honor and courage, always aware that the veil between the worlds was never far away. For the Vikings, dreams were not just fleeting images or unconscious musings, they were considered sacred messages, direct communications from the gods, ancestors, and spirits. To them, the world of dreams was not a mere reflection of the subconscious, but a powerful realm where the veil between the living and the divine grew thin, allowing the soul to receive guidance, prophecy, and insight. Dreams were seen as vital tools for decision-making, spiritual awakening, and personal growth. Unlike modern perceptions, where dreams are often dismissed as random neural activity or psychological processes, the Vikings regarded their dreams with the utmost reverence and seriousness. Dreams were not just personal experiences, they were believed to shape the course of one's life, revealing hidden truths and guiding the soul on its journey. The Viking belief in dreams as divine communication was deeply rooted in their polytheistic worldview, where gods and spirits actively engaged with the lives of humans. The gods were not distant, abstract entities. They were present in the everyday lives of the Vikings, influencing their decisions, guiding their actions, and even appearing in their dreams. Whether it was Odin, the Allfather, seeking to impart wisdom, or Thor sending a vision of impending danger, the gods were intimately involved in the lives of the Vikings through their dreams. In this sense, dreams were seen as one of the primary ways in which the divine realm interacted with the mortal world. The dream world, like the waking world, was inhabited by powerful forces, gods, ancestors, spirits, and even the dead, who communicated their will and desires through the dreams of the living. Odin, the god of wisdom and knowledge, was perhaps the most closely associated with dreams and visions. According to Viking myth, Odin was a seeker of wisdom, constantly seeking knowledge to understand the deeper mysteries of the world. It was said that Odin often sent dreams to mortals, imparting his wisdom or revealing hidden truths about fate, the future, and the nature of the cosmos. Many Vikings believed that Odin would visit them in their dreams, offering cryptic messages or visions of events yet to come. These dreams were considered highly significant and were often interpreted by wise seers or shamans, who would offer their insight into the meaning of the visions. In addition to Odin, the Valkyries, female warriors who served Odin, were also believed to play a role in the dreams of the Vikings. The Valkyries, who were tasked with guiding the souls of fallen warriors to Valhalla, were seen as spiritual intermediaries between the mortal world and the divine. They were believed to visit the dreams of warriors, offering protection, guidance, or even foretelling their fate. If a Viking had a dream in which a Valkyrie appeared, it was often seen as a powerful omen, signaling either an impending battle or a significant shift in the individual's destiny. These dreams were considered to be blessings from the gods, signs that the dreamer was chosen for something important or that the gods were watching over them. But dreams were not always benevolent. Just as the gods could communicate through dreams, so could darker, malevolent forces. The Vikings believed that evil spirits, mischievous trolls, and even the giants from Jotunheim could invade the dream world, attempting to mislead, confuse, or harm the soul. These dark forces were particularly active during sleep, when the boundaries between the physical and spiritual worlds were at their most porous. In some cases, nightmares were seen as warnings, cautionary tales sent by the gods to alert the dreamer to impending danger or to provide guidance in moments of crisis. These dreams were often interpreted by the seers or wise individuals in the community, who would discern the meaning behind the troubling visions and offer solutions or rituals to counter the dark forces at play. Despite the presence of malevolent forces, the Vikings believed that dreams had the power to protect the dreamer as well. Protective charms, amulets, and rituals were used to shield the soul during sleep, ensuring that only divine or helpful spirits would be allowed to communicate with the sleeper. The use of these protective tools demonstrated the Vikings' belief in the vulnerability of the soul during sleep and the importance of guarding it from harmful influences. It was understood that while sleep was a time of spiritual exploration, it was also a time of vulnerability, where the soul could be easily swayed by malevolent forces. Thus, the Vikings took great care to protect themselves from these forces, both through physical means, such as amulets, and through spiritual means, such as rituals or prayers to the gods. Dreams were also deeply tied to the concept of fate, a central theme in Viking thought. The Vikings believed that fate governed all aspects of life, from birth to death, and that even the gods were subject to its influence. Dreams, in this context, were often seen as glimpses of fate's workings, offering the dreamer a chance to see into the future or to understand their place in the grand cosmic order. These dreams were not random or arbitrary, they were seen as carefully orchestrated by the Norns, the three fate-weaving goddesses who controlled the destinies of all beings. The Norns were believed to spin the threads of fate, weaving the future for individuals and even for entire communities. When the Vikings experienced dreams that seemed prophetic or deeply significant, it was often interpreted as a message from the Norns, revealing their role in the larger tapestry of fate. One of the most powerful ways in which dreams were tied to fate was through prophetic dreams. These dreams were often vivid, intense, and filled with symbols or messages that foretold future events. Prophetic dreams were seen as direct messages from the gods, warning the dreamer of impending danger or guiding them toward a particular course of action. Warriors, in particular, relied heavily on prophetic dreams, as they believed these dreams could foretell the outcome of battles, the success of raids, or even the timing of their death. A Viking warrior might dream of victory in battle, a sign that the gods favored them and that they would emerge victorious. Conversely, a dream of defeat or death was seen as a sign that the gods were displeased, and it was often interpreted as a warning to reconsider one's actions or to seek divine intervention. Prophetic dreams were not limited to individuals. The Vikings also believed that dreams could be shared collectively by a community, offering insights into the fate of an entire tribe or clan. In times of war or crisis, entire groups of Vikings might experience similar dreams, reinforcing the belief that the gods were speaking to them collectively, guiding their actions and decisions. These collective dreams were often seen as signs of divine favor or disfavor, and the community would come together to interpret them, deciding on the best course of action based on the messages received in their dreams. For the Vikings, dreams were not just a personal experience but a communal one. They were a bridge between the individual and the divine, a way for the gods to speak directly to the people. Dreams could offer guidance, protection, and wisdom, but they could also serve as warnings or reminders of the fragile nature of fate. In a world where life was uncertain and often violent, dreams were one of the few ways the Vikings could connect with the divine and gain insight into the future. They were a vital part of the Viking spiritual experience, allowing the soul to commune with the gods, ancestors, and the forces of fate in a way that no other aspect of life could. As we explore the role of dreams in Viking culture, we see that they were far more than just visions during sleep. Dreams were integral to the Vikings' understanding of their relationship with the divine, with fate, and with the spiritual world around them. They were a means of communication, a way for the gods to guide and warn, a way for the soul to connect with the larger cosmic order. Through their dreams, the Vikings navigated the mysteries of life and death, constantly seeking wisdom, direction, and protection from the gods who watched over them. In this way, dreams were not just an individual experience, they were a vital part of the shared spiritual journey of the Viking people. In the Viking world, dreams held immense significance, and their interpretations were not left to chance or personal whims. Dream interpretation was considered an art, one that required wisdom, insight, and a deep connection to the spiritual world. The role of the seer, or Volva, and the shaman-like figures within Viking society was crucial in understanding and deciphering the meanings behind dreams. These individuals were seen as intermediaries between the physical world and the spiritual realms, capable of interpreting the divine messages hidden within dreams. They possessed a rare, sacred knowledge that allowed them to tap into the unconscious and divine realms, guiding the Vikings toward the correct path and helping them navigate the often ambiguous and mysterious messages of their dreams. The Volva was perhaps the most revered figure in Viking society when it came to dreams and divination. These women, who were often older and wiser, were believed to have the ability to communicate directly with the gods and spirits. They were highly respected for their spiritual knowledge and their ability to interpret the messages that the gods sent through dreams, visions, and omens. The Volva's role was integral to Viking spiritual practices, and her understanding of dreams was considered to be divinely inspired. When a Viking had a dream that needed interpretation, it was often the Volva who was sought out for guidance. Her ability to discern the hidden meanings behind dreams was viewed as a gift, a connection to the gods and the otherworldly forces that shaped the Vikings' fate. The Volva's connection to the spiritual world was deep and intimate. It was believed that she could enter trance-like states through rituals, prayers, and ceremonies, during which she would receive visions and messages from the gods, ancestors, or spirits. These trances allowed the Volva to bridge the gap between the realms, accessing knowledge that was otherwise hidden from ordinary mortals. Her ability to interpret dreams was seen as an extension of this spiritual connection. In a society where the divine and the supernatural were ever present, the Volva was a vital conduit for divine wisdom, particularly when it came to understanding dreams. The process of dream interpretation was not a simple one. The Vikings believed that dreams were often veiled in symbolism, and the meanings were not always immediately clear. A seemingly benign dream could hold a hidden warning or a prophecy, and it was the vulva's job to discern these messages. The Viking worldview was one in which fate and the will of the gods were intricately woven into every aspect of life, and dreams were no exception. A dream about a storm, for instance, might be interpreted not as a literal weather event, but as a symbol of impending conflict or an emotional upheaval in the dreamer's life. Likewise, a dream of a majestic wolf could signify strength, leadership, or even the presence of an ancient spirit guide. The vulva would use her vast spiritual knowledge to decode these symbols and provide the dreamer with a deeper understanding of what the gods and spirits were trying to communicate. In addition to the vulva, there were also spiritual leaders and shamans, often men or women with a deep knowledge of runes, rituals, and the supernatural, who played important roles in interpreting dreams. These shamans, though less celebrated than the vulva, were often seen as warriors of the soul, capable of entering the spirit world through rituals, offerings, and physical acts of devotion. They would sometimes use dream interpretation as a way to communicate with the gods or foretell the future. A shaman might enter a trance or perform a ritual before sleep to receive a message from the gods, which could then be interpreted as a dream or vision. These practices were not restricted to any particular gender. Men and women alike could serve as shamans, though their methods and experiences might differ. The Viking practice of runic divination was another important tool in the interpretation of dreams. Runes were not just symbols or letters, they were believed to hold deep, magical meanings. The Vikings believed that runes could reveal hidden truths about the world and the self, and they were often used by shamans and seers to interpret dreams or visions. The process involved casting a set of runes and interpreting the patterns that emerged. If a Viking had a dream that they felt was particularly important, they might call upon a shaman or a vulva to use the runes to divine the meaning behind the dream. The runes, with their deep connection to the cosmos, were seen as a powerful tool for understanding the messages of the gods. In Viking society, there was also a strong belief in the power of ritual to aid in dream interpretation. Before sleep, a person might perform specific rituals to invite divine messages or to ensure that the gods would communicate with them in their dreams. These rituals often involved offerings, prayers, and invocations to particular gods, especially Odin, the god of wisdom and prophecy. Since Odin was often associated with dreams and visions, invoking him before sleep was seen as a way to ensure that the gods would speak to the dreamer. The Vikings would sometimes burn incense, chant sacred prayers, or sleep with amulets to protect their soul during its journey through the realms. These rituals created a sacred space for the soul to traverse, ensuring that it would be shielded from malevolent spirits and guided by the gods. Dream interpretation in Viking culture was also heavily influenced by the cultural context and the individual's personal circumstances. A dream experienced by a warrior before going into battle would likely be interpreted very differently than a dream experienced by a farmer or a seafaring merchant. For warriors, dreams often carried direct messages related to their physical safety or the outcome of a battle. A dream in which a Viking found themselves wielding a mighty weapon might be seen as an omen of victory, whereas a dream of defeat or injury could be a sign that the gods were displeased. For a farmer, on the other hand, a dream about a bountiful harvest or healthy livestock might be interpreted as a blessing from the gods, ensuring the success of the harvest. The significance of dreams was not only about immediate, personal meanings but also about how dreams connected individuals to their larger ancestral lineage and the divine order. The Vikings believed that their dreams often held messages from their ancestors, who had passed on wisdom and guidance through the generations. These messages were seen as sacred reminders of one's heritage, and dreams were often interpreted as a way to connect with the wisdom of those who had come before. In this way, dreams were seen as a bridge between the living and the dead, and a connection to the spiritual legacy of the Viking people. Viking communities would often gather together to share their dreams and seek collective interpretation. Dream sharing was not only a personal experience but a communal one. It was believed that when multiple people experienced similar dreams or visions, it was a sign that the gods were sending a message to the entire community. This collective understanding of dreams was a way to reinforce shared beliefs and values, ensuring that the community remained aligned with the will of the gods. The role of seers, shamans, and vulvas in interpreting dreams was thus not just about providing individual guidance, it was about maintaining the spiritual and moral integrity of the Viking society as a whole. Dream interpretation was a communal practice, woven into the fabric of Viking life. It reinforced the belief that the divine was always present, that fate was an inescapable force, and that dreams were an essential means of communication between the gods and mortals. By interpreting their dreams, the Vikings could ensure that their actions were aligned with the will of the gods, that they were following the path of destiny, and that they were honoring the spiritual forces that guided their lives. In the end, the dream interpreters, whether vulvas, shamans, or runic diviners, were the gatekeepers to the unseen world. They served as conduits between the living and the spiritual, ensuring that the messages from the divine realms were understood and acted upon. Their role was not only to interpret the dreams but to maintain the connection between the physical world and the spiritual, guiding the Vikings through the complexities of fate, prophecy, and divine will. Through their insights, the Vikings navigated the mysterious and often unpredictable realm of dreams, ensuring that their path was always aligned with the forces that shaped their world. In the Viking worldview, sleep was not only a time for rest and rejuvenation but also a vulnerable state in which the soul could be exposed to malevolent forces. While the soul ventured through the realms during sleep, it was at risk of being intercepted by harmful spirits, evil entities, or even the dark forces of the cosmos. To the Vikings, sleep was a sacred journey, but it was one fraught with dangers that could disrupt the soul's spiritual voyage or cause physical harm to the sleeper. As such, protecting the soul during sleep was of paramount importance. The Vikings employed various spiritual practices, charms, rituals, and amulets to safeguard their souls from these unseen dangers. They believed that the soul, once freed from the body, was particularly vulnerable to attack by spirits, demons, and other dark forces. Ensuring that the soul remained unharmed during sleep was as much a part of their spiritual practices as the sacred journeys the soul made to the divine realms. One of the key methods of spiritual protection involved the use of charms and amulets. These small, often intricately crafted objects were believed to hold powerful protective properties, capable of warding off evil spirits and harmful forces. The Vikings, being skilled craftsmen, made a variety of these objects, often inscribing them with runes or symbols that were believed to carry protective magic. Some amulets featured symbols such as Thor's hammer, the Mjolnir, which was thought to possess immense protective power, able to ward off any malevolent forces that might threaten the sleeper's soul. The hammer, associated with Thor, the thunder god, represented strength and protection. Wearing this symbol during sleep was thought to shield the dreamer from nightmares, malevolent spirits, or dark energies that might try to infiltrate the dream world. Other amulets included symbols of the sun, known for its life-giving and protective qualities, or symbols associated with the Valkyries, who were believed to protect the souls of warriors, ensuring their safe passage to Valhalla. Amulets weren't the only form of protection. The Vikings also relied on rituals and prayers to create a protective barrier around the sleeper. Before going to bed, it was common for a Viking to perform certain rituals to invoke the gods for protection during the night. These rituals could involve offerings, chants, or even the recitation of sacred verses that called upon the gods to shield the sleeper from any malevolent influence. One such prayer might invoke Odin, the god of wisdom and war, asking for divine guidance and protection as the soul traveled through the realms. Other prayers might be directed at Frigg, the goddess of love and fertility, or Freya, the goddess of beauty and war, seeking their intervention to protect the dreamer from harm. The Vikings' understanding of the gods was intimate and personal, and invoking them for protection during sleep was a way to ensure that the divine realm was actively involved in safeguarding the soul. Another widely practiced form of spiritual protection involved the use of protective spells. These spells were often recited aloud or written on paper and placed under the pillow, believed to act as a safeguard against negative energies during the night. The Vikings had a deep belief in the power of words, seeing them as capable of shaping reality. By speaking certain incantations or casting specific runes, They could influence the forces of the world around them, including the spiritual realm. For example, a Viking might recite a spell to ward off the maras, evil spirits that were believed to cause nightmares and restlessness. The mara was a sinister entity that would sit on the chest of a sleeping person, suffocating them or causing disturbing dreams. To prevent such an occurrence, a person might call upon the gods, recite a protective rune, or place an object, such as a protective stone or amulet, near the bed to prevent the mara from entering the dream world. In addition to these protective charms and spells, the Vikings also believed that certain physical objects could act as spiritual barriers against evil spirits. For example, iron was widely regarded as a material that could ward off malevolent forces. Iron was thought to have a connection to the physical and spiritual realms and was considered a powerful tool for protection. The Vikings might place an iron object, such as a horseshoe or a knife, under the bed or near the sleeping area to protect the soul from being harmed during its journey. Iron was believed to be a powerful deterrent to any dark forces attempting to intrude on the sleeper's soul, acting as a physical and spiritual boundary. Viking communities also believed in the power of dream-warding rituals that took place on a communal level. These rituals often involved the collective participation of the village or clan, reinforcing the sense of community and shared spiritual responsibility. One such ritual might involve a group of people gathering around a sick or vulnerable member of the community, chanting prayers and songs together to call upon the gods for protection during sleep. This collective spiritual effort was believed to strengthen the protective force, ensuring that the dreamer would be safe from evil spirits or dark forces. In this way, the Vikings believed that the entire community was interconnected not only through their physical lives but also through their spiritual journeys. The safety of one member was the safety of all, and communal rituals served to reinforce this interconnectedness. Another practice that served to protect the sleeper's soul was the use of sacred herbs and plants. The Vikings, being deeply attuned to the natural world, recognized the spiritual significance of certain plants and herbs that were believed to have protective properties. For instance, sage was often burned to purify the space and ward off negative energies, while juniper berries were believed to provide spiritual protection during sleep. These herbs would be placed around the sleeping area or burned as incense, creating a protective and spiritually cleansing atmosphere. The use of natural elements to protect the soul was in keeping with the Vikings' broader belief that the natural world was intertwined with the spiritual one. The elements of earth, air, fire, and water were not just physical forces, they were also spiritual forces, and by harnessing them, the Vikings could protect their souls during sleep. The Vikings also held certain superstitions that were tied to sleep and protection. For example, it was believed that if a person slept with their feet facing the door, they were inviting evil spirits to enter. This was because the feet were seen as the most vulnerable part of the body, and having them exposed to the door was thought to invite unwanted spiritual forces. As a result, it was common for Vikings to sleep in specific positions or to arrange their beds in such a way that their heads faced the door, preventing any unwanted spiritual intrusions. In Viking culture, the protection of the soul during sleep was not just a matter of physical safety, it was a matter of spiritual survival. The Vikings understood that sleep was a time when the soul ventured into realms beyond the physical world, making it vulnerable to both divine and malevolent forces. Whether it was through the use of amulets, charms, spells, or rituals, the Vikings took great care to ensure that their souls were shielded during sleep. They believed that the protection of the soul was essential not only for personal safety but also for maintaining the balance between the physical and spiritual worlds. By safeguarding the soul, the Vikings ensured that their spiritual journeys through sleep would be fruitful, safe, and protected from any dark forces that might try to interfere with their sacred voyage. In a world where fate, death, and the divine played such an important role, the act of protecting the soul during sleep was one of the most profound and necessary practices within Viking culture. In the Viking worldview, death was not seen as the ultimate end of existence but as a transition, a journey to another realm where the soul continued its existence. Sleep, in this context, was intimately connected to death and the afterlife. The Vikings believed that the transition from the waking world to the world of dreams was akin to the soul's journey to the afterlife, where it would eventually face its fate. This intersection of sleep and the afterlife was central to their spiritual beliefs, shaping not only their attitudes toward death but also how they viewed the very nature of existence and the afterlife. For the Vikings, sleep was a rehearsal for death, and the way one slept, the dreams one had, and the rituals surrounding sleep all played significant roles in preparing the soul for its eventual journey to the realms beyond. The concept of the afterlife in Viking culture was complex and multifaceted, encompassing a variety of realms and destinations depending on one's life, actions, and death. The most well-known afterlife realm was Valhalla, the Hall of the Slain, where the bravest of warriors were chosen by the Valkyries to dwell eternally. Valhalla was not a passive afterlife but a place of active participation, where warriors continued their training and fought gloriously every day, only to feast and celebrate their victories in the evening. This afterlife was reserved for those who died in battle, a reward for their valor and strength. For the Vikings, Valhalla was the epitome of the warrior's afterlife, a place of honor, power, and camaraderie. It was believed that the soul's journey to Valhalla could begin even during sleep, as dreams could act as messages from the Valkyries, guiding the soul toward its eventual place in the Hall of the Gods. However, not all Vikings were destined for Valhalla. Those who died of old age, sickness, or other nonviolent causes were believed to journey to Helheim, the land of the dead, ruled by the goddess Hel. Unlike the heroic and vibrant life of Valhalla, Helheim was often perceived as a quieter, more somber realm. It was a place of rest, reflection, and renewal, where souls could exist in peace for eternity. The Vikings saw Helheim not as a place of punishment but as a realm for those who had lived honorable lives but had not died in battle. The journey to Helheim, like the journey to Valhalla, was believed to begin at the time of death, but it was also understood that dreams and visions could offer glimpses of what awaited the soul in the afterlife. In this way, the Vikings saw sleep as a kind of rehearsal for the afterlife, where the soul might visit these realms during sleep, experiencing the echoes of its future journey. The concept of the afterlife was not limited to Valhalla and Helheim alone. There were other realms where the souls of the dead might go, depending on their life experiences. Folkvanger, the field of the goddess Freya, was another destination for those who had lived with honor and courage. Freya was associated with love, beauty, fertility, and war, and her field was said to be a place of peace and prosperity, where the souls of the dead could rest after their earthly lives. For those who had not earned a place in Valhalla or Helheim, Folkvanger represented a kinder, more serene afterlife, a reflection of Freya's nurturing and protective nature. In Viking dreams, the appearance of Freya or her symbols was often interpreted as a sign that the dreamer's soul was destined for her peaceful realm. Another afterlife destination was Niflheim, the cold and misty realm of ice and death. Niflheim was associated with the primordial forces of creation, and it was often seen as a realm where souls could pass through a process of spiritual purification. It was the realm of rebirth, where the soul might be cleansed before moving on to other worlds. This belief in the purification of the soul was reflected in the Viking practice of funeral rites, which were meant to help guide the soul through its journey to the afterlife, preparing it for whatever realm it was destined to inhabit. For the Vikings, sleep was the bridge between the physical world and these afterlife realms. Just as death was seen as a passage to the next life, so too was sleep viewed as a passage into the world beyond. The boundaries between life and death were not as rigid as they are in modern understandings. The souls of the deceased were believed to linger close to the living, especially in dreams, where the dead could communicate with their loved ones. Dreams of deceased ancestors, warriors, or family members were not considered mere memories or subconscious thoughts but were seen as actual encounters with the deceased, who might offer guidance, protection, or warnings. The soul's journey during sleep was not only about connecting with the gods or the forces of fate, it was also about connecting with the dead, whose presence was felt in the dream world. In the Viking tradition, ancestor worship played a significant role in shaping their views on the afterlife. The ancestors were seen as guardians, protectors, and guides, and the souls of the dead were believed to continue to influence the lives of the living. The dead were honored not only in rituals and ceremonies but also in dreams. When a Viking dreamt of an ancestor, it was often interpreted as a message from the past, a reminder of the family's legacy, or a call to uphold the virtues and values of the ancestors. The deceased were believed to watch over their descendants, ensuring that their actions were aligned with the family's honor and the god's will. The rituals of burial and funerary rites were another important aspect of the Viking understanding of the afterlife. These rites were designed not only to honor the dead but to guide the soul on its journey to the afterlife. The Vikings believed that the journey from life to death was fraught with peril, and the dead needed help to reach their final resting place. The elaborate burial practices, including the construction of burial mounds or the placement of offerings and objects with the dead, were seen as vital to ensuring the safe passage of the soul. These rituals were designed to protect the soul from wandering, ensuring that it found its way to its destined realm, whether that was Valhalla, Helheim, or any of the other afterlife destinations. In this sense, sleep was not only a personal experience for the individual but also a collective and ancestral one. The boundaries between the living, the dead, and the divine were porous, and the Vikings believed that the dreams they had could offer glimpses into the future, the past, and the afterlife. The journey of the soul during sleep was a sacred one, a passage that mirrored the journey the soul would take after death. For the Vikings, sleep and death were intrinsically connected, each a step on the eternal cycle of existence. By understanding and interpreting dreams, the Vikings could gain insights into the soul's ultimate journey, ensuring that their lives were in alignment with the gods, their ancestors, and the divine forces that govern the universe. Thus, the Vikings' views on the afterlife and the role of sleep in the soul's journey reflect a profound belief in the continuity of existence, where death is not an end but a transition into another realm of being. Sleep was not only a rest for the body but a sacred journey for the soul, a journey that connected the living with the dead and the divine. It was through sleep, dreams, and rituals that the Vikings maintained their connection to the afterlife, ensuring that the souls of the deceased continued to guide and protect the living, and that the cycle of life, death, and rebirth was never truly broken. Norse mythology was not just a collection of stories or religious beliefs to the Vikings. It was the very fabric of their understanding of the world, their place within it, and the realms beyond. The gods, creatures, and myths of the Norse pantheon shaped every aspect of Viking life, from their daily actions to their dreams. For the Vikings, sleep was not just a physical necessity, but a spiritual journey, one deeply intertwined with the powerful figures and themes of their mythology. The gods, heroes, and creatures of Norse mythology were not distant, abstract concepts. They were living, breathing presences that interacted with the world, shaping events, destinies, and even the dream world. As such, Viking dreams were often filled with mythological symbols, figures, and narratives, acting as channels through which the divine could communicate directly with the dreamer. The connection between Norse mythology and the dream world was profound. The gods of the Norse pantheon were not simply distant entities residing in the heavens. They were actively involved in the lives of mortals, guiding, protecting, and shaping their fates. As the Vikings slept, they believed that the gods could enter the dream world, offering insights, guidance, or warnings about the future. Dreams were thus seen as direct interactions between the human soul and the divine realm, with mythological figures playing significant roles in shaping the content and meaning of dreams. In this sense, the dream world was an extension of the mythological universe, a place where the boundaries between gods and mortals, the living and the dead, were blurred. One of the most influential figures in Viking dreams was Odin, the All-Father, the god of wisdom, war, and poetry. Odin was deeply connected to the realm of dreams, as he was often seen as the god who could both inspire and interpret dreams. According to Viking belief, Odin would send dreams to mortals, often as a way to impart his wisdom, offer prophetic visions, or warn of impending danger. These dreams, sometimes seen as messages of divine insight, were revered by the Vikings and interpreted by seers and shamans. For warriors, an appearance of Odin in a dream was seen as a direct blessing, a sign that the god was watching over them, providing strength and guidance. Odin's connection to dreams and visions was so strong that it was believed that he himself had sacrificed his eye in exchange for the ability to see into the future. Thus, when Vikings dreamt of Odin, it was often interpreted as a sign that they were receiving a glimpse of the future or a divine revelation about their fate. Odin's ravens, Hugin and Munin, also played important roles in Viking dreamscapes. These two ravens, whose names mean thought and memory, were believed to fly throughout the world, gathering information for their master. In dreams, the appearance of these ravens often signified an infusion of knowledge or insight, as though the dreamer was being bestowed with wisdom from Odin himself. Ravens, in Norse mythology, were seen as messengers between the mortal realm and the divine, and their appearance in dreams could symbolize the arrival of a message from the gods. This belief reflected the deep connection between Viking culture and the spiritual, where even the natural world was seen as imbued with divine significance. The dreamer, in encountering these ravens, might feel a surge of understanding or be gifted with a powerful insight that would shape their future actions. Another important figure in Viking mythology whose influence permeated the dream world was Thor, the thunder god, the protector of mankind, and a symbol of strength and courage. Thor was often invoked by the Vikings during times of war or danger, and his presence in a dream could signify the need for bravery, protection, or a call to battle. Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, was a powerful symbol of divine protection and was often carried by Vikings in the form of amulets, believing it could protect them from evil forces. In dreams, the appearance of Thor or Mjolnir might indicate that the dreamer was about to face a significant challenge or battle. It could also signal divine protection, reassuring the dreamer that they would be safeguarded by the thunder god's might. A dream in which Thor struck down enemies or fought off danger was often interpreted as a sign of victory in the face of adversity, with the dreamer being assured of divine favor and strength. In contrast to the protective and warrior-like figures of Odin and Thor, Freyr, the god of fertility, prosperity, and peace, offered a different kind of influence in Viking dreams. Freyr's presence in dreams often symbolized abundance, harmony, and the flourishing of life. As the god associated with peace and prosperity, Freyr was invoked during rituals aimed at ensuring a bountiful harvest or a successful voyage. In dreams, Freyr might appear to offer blessings of fertility, peace, or protection during times of agricultural or maritime activities. A dream in which Freyr appeared might be interpreted as a sign of a prosperous future, especially for those who depended on the land or sea for their livelihood. The god's connection to nature and abundance meant that his presence in dreams was often associated with favorable outcomes and a harmonious life. On the darker side of the Norse pantheon, Hel, the goddess of the underworld, had a significant presence in the dream world. Hel, ruler of the realm of the dead, was associated with the afterlife and the fate of souls who did not die in battle. Her appearance in dreams often symbolized death, the end of a cycle, or the need to face unresolved issues. When a Viking dreamt of Hel, it could signify that they were approaching the end of an important phase in their life, whether it be a literal death, the end of a relationship, or the conclusion of an emotional or spiritual journey. While Hel was not always seen as a malevolent figure, her presence in dreams often carried with it a reminder of the inevitability of death and the importance of living an honorable life to ensure a favorable afterlife. For some, dreams involving Hel might have been a call to confront their fears or unresolved issues, preparing them for the spiritual transition that lay ahead. The Valkyries, the female warriors who served Odin, also played a significant role in Viking dreams. These powerful figures, who chose which warriors would live and die in battle, were believed to appear in dreams to guide the souls of fallen warriors to the afterlife. When a Viking dreamt of a Valkyrie, it was often seen as a sign that they were being chosen for something significant, whether it was a battle, a spiritual test, or a rite of passage. The Valkyrie's presence in dreams was particularly important for warriors, as it signified divine intervention and the possibility of a glorious death. For those who had died, the appearance of a Valkyrie in a dream was interpreted as a sign that their soul had been claimed for Valhalla and was on its way to eternal glory. Norse creatures such as wolves, serpents, and ravens also had symbolic roles in the Viking dream world. Wolves, often associated with the wild, the hunt, and the primal forces of nature, could appear in dreams to represent power, freedom, or the untamed aspects of the self. In contrast, serpents, often linked with danger, deception, and transformation, could appear in dreams to warn of hidden threats or impending change. These creatures, though not gods themselves, embodied powerful mythological symbolism, and their appearances in dreams were carefully considered by the Vikings. They were seen as representations of forces beyond the human realm, messages from the spiritual world urging the dreamer to be aware of potential challenges, transformations, or opportunities. The relationship between Viking dreams and Norse mythology was thus one of deep interconnection, where the myths, gods, and creatures of the pantheon provided a framework through which dreams could be understood. Dreams were not random or meaningless. They were expressions of the divine, a way for the gods to communicate with mortals, offering wisdom, guidance, and prophecy. Each dream was a unique interaction between the dreamer and the larger forces of fate, destiny, and the divine order. In this way, the Vikings understood their dreams as sacred experiences, moments in which they could glimpse the workings of the gods and the fate that awaited them. Whether it was Odin's wisdom, Thor's strength, Freyr's prosperity, or Hel's reminder of mortality, the gods and creatures of Norse mythology were ever present in the dream world, shaping the spiritual journeys of the Vikings and guiding them through the mysteries of life, death, and the afterlife. In Viking culture, the line between reality and the spiritual world was often blurred. Dreams, particularly prophetic ones, were seen as a direct channel of communication between the gods, the ancestors, and the mortal world. Prophetic dreams were highly valued, often regarded as divine messages sent to guide individuals, families, or entire communities toward specific actions or decisions. These dreams were not considered mere products of the subconscious or random neural firing. Rather, they were interpreted as glimpses of the future, insights into destiny, and warnings of things to come. For the Vikings, prophetic dreams were integral to their worldview, shaping their beliefs, their decisions, and even the course of history. Prophetic dreams were especially important to the Volva, the seer or wise woman of the Viking community. The Volva was believed to have the ability to enter trance states and commune with the gods, receiving visions and dreams that could foretell events or reveal hidden truths. Her role as a spiritual guide was pivotal in Viking society, and her ability to interpret prophetic dreams was highly respected. When a Viking sought guidance about a specific event or decision, the Volva was often called upon to help decipher dreams or offer insight into the divine messages that lay hidden within them. The Volva's dreams were considered to carry great weight, as they were seen as divinely inspired, revealing the will of the gods and the forces that shaped the Vikings' destiny. One of the most well-known examples of prophetic dreams in Viking culture comes from the sagas, the rich literary tradition that preserved the myths, legends, and histories of the Vikings. The saga of the Volsungs, for instance, recounts how the hero Sigurd, after having been raised by his foster father, the wise King Hjordis, has a series of prophetic dreams. These dreams foretell his great destiny, including his heroic deeds, his betrayal, and eventual death. Sigurd's dreams are not mere reflections of his personal desires or fears, they are divine messages leading him toward the path that he must follow. In this saga, Sigurd's dreams are integral to his story, guiding him as he navigates the complexities of fate, family, and honor. Prophetic dreams were also significant in the lives of Viking kings and warriors. For these individuals, dreams were not only personal but political. A king's dream could signal the fate of his reign, a warrior's dream might predict the outcome of a battle, and a community's collective dreams could forewarn of impending disaster. Kings and chieftains often sought the counsel of seers or wise men to interpret their dreams, believing that the future of their rule might depend on the accuracy of these visions. The significance of dreams in the political sphere was not only about foreseeing victory or defeat in battle but also about understanding the deeper forces at play in the world. Forces that were thought to govern the flow of history, the success of their lineage, and the protection of their people. In some cases, the Vikings believed that prophetic dreams could be induced by specific rituals or practices, allowing individuals to gain insight into their future. One such practice involved the use of runes, the ancient script that was believed to hold mystical power. Runes were inscribed on stones or carved into wooden sticks and could be used in divinatory practices to receive answers or guidance from the gods. A Viking might perform a rune casting before sleep, seeking to communicate directly with the divine and receive a prophetic dream in return. The runes were often seen as a way to unlock hidden knowledge, allowing the dreamer to glimpse the future or understand their fate. The appearance of certain runes in a dream could indicate specific outcomes, whether good or bad, giving the dreamer the chance to prepare for what was to come. Another practice that helped induce prophetic dreams was the use of sacred rituals and offerings. Before sleep, a Viking might engage in rituals meant to invoke the gods and ask for divine intervention in their dreams. These rituals could involve offerings of food, drink, or even personal items, which were placed at an altar or sacred site. By performing these rituals, the Viking would seek to gain favor from the gods, hoping that they would provide guidance or prophecy through their dreams. The ritualistic aspect of this practice reinforced the connection between the waking world and the divine, ensuring that the dreamer was prepared to receive messages from the spiritual realm. For the Vikings, sleep was not just a passive state but an active spiritual journey, one that required preparation and intention. The connection between prophetic dreams and the concept of fate was also deeply embedded in Viking culture. The Vikings believed that the future was already written in the threads of fate, controlled by powerful beings known as the Norns. These three women, Ord, Verdandi, and Skuld, were responsible for weaving the threads of fate for all beings, including gods and mortals alike. Prophetic dreams, then, were seen as glimpses into the work of the Norns, offering the dreamer a peek at the tapestry of their destiny. These dreams were often interpreted as warnings or insights into the path that the dreamer was destined to follow. Whether the dream was one of victory or doom, it was understood that the Norns had already decreed it. Prophetic dreams were therefore a reminder of the unchangeable nature of fate and the importance of accepting one's place in the grand design of the universe. However, not all prophetic dreams were seen as inevitable or fixed. The Vikings also believed that human actions could influence fate, and dreams often served as a way to provide guidance on how to shape one's future. A dream might foretell an impending battle, but the dreamer was still free to choose how they would act in that battle, whether to fight bravely, retreat, or make a strategic decision. In this sense, prophetic dreams were not seen as a sentence but as a tool for the dreamer to navigate the course of their life. They were often interpreted as opportunities for change or growth, offering the dreamer a chance to take action and influence the outcome of their fate. While prophetic dreams were highly valued, they were also seen as potentially dangerous. The unpredictability of dreams and the blurred boundaries between reality and the dream world meant that some dreams could be misinterpreted, leading to poor decisions or harmful actions. The Vikings believed that only those with wisdom and spiritual insight, such as the Valva or the seers, could properly interpret the true meaning of a prophetic dream. A Viking who misinterpreted a prophetic dream might act in a way that was not in line with their fate, resulting in disastrous consequences. Therefore, great care was taken in ensuring that dreams were understood properly, and the guidance of wise figures was sought to interpret these dreams with accuracy. The power of prophetic dreams was not limited to individuals but extended to the community as well. In Viking society, dreams were often shared among family members or clan leaders, particularly if they were believed to foretell important events for the group. A prophetic dream might indicate a coming war, the birth of a great leader, or the success of a major expedition. These collective dreams were seen as a way for the community to prepare for significant events, aligning their actions with the guidance provided by the gods. The shared understanding of a prophetic dream could strengthen the bonds between individuals, creating a sense of unity and purpose as the community prepared to face the challenges ahead. Prophetic dreams also had a role in shaping historical events. Some of the most significant events in Viking history, such as the outcomes of battles, the rise and fall of kings, or the success of raids, were believed to be influenced by prophetic dreams. For example, a king might receive a dream before a crucial battle that foretells victory or defeat, or a chieftain might dream of a great leader who will rise to prominence in the future. These dreams were often seen as affirmations of the god's will, providing a sense of divine endorsement or warning. The belief that dreams could influence the course of history gave them a unique and powerful place in Viking society, with many significant actions being taken as a result of prophetic visions. In conclusion, prophetic dreams were a central part of Viking culture, woven deeply into the fabric of their beliefs about fate, gods, and destiny. These dreams were not simply glimpses of the future, but messages from the divine realm, offering guidance, warning, and insight. They were seen as integral to understanding one's place in the grand design of the cosmos and played a significant role in shaping the actions of individuals, families, and communities. Through the interpretation of prophetic dreams, the Vikings sought to align themselves with the will of the gods and ensure that their actions were in accordance with their fate. The significance of these dreams cannot be overstated, as they provided not only a connection to the divine but also a means by which the Vikings could navigate the uncertainties of life, death, and the afterlife. Dreams held a profound place in Viking culture, not only as a means of receiving divine guidance or glimpses into the future but also as a key element in shaping the Viking identity itself. For the Norse people, the boundaries between the waking world and the realm of dreams were not clearly defined. They believed that the dream world, much like the physical world, was influenced by the gods, spirits, and forces of fate. Dreams were woven into the fabric of Viking culture, shaping not just individual lives but also the collective psyche of the Viking people. The Vikings, with their rich and complex worldview, understood that their destiny was shaped by both their actions in the waking world and the messages they received in their dreams. As such, the role of dreams in shaping Viking identity extended far beyond the personal and individual, influencing the very essence of what it meant to be a Viking. At the heart of Viking identity was the belief in honor, bravery, and the pursuit of glory, especially in battle. These ideals were woven deeply into the culture and could be seen reflected in Viking dreams. For warriors, dreams often provided a space to engage with these ideals, reinforcing their commitment to their martial path and shaping their understanding of their role in society. A Viking warrior might dream of an epic battle, the clash of swords, or the grandeur of Valhalla. These dreams were not merely visions of violent conflict, they were affirmations of their destiny as warriors, ensuring that they remained steadfast in their pursuit of bravery and honor. For many, a dream that involved Odin, Thor, or the Valkyries could act as a powerful motivation to live up to the heroic standards of the gods, confirming that their life was indeed on the path toward greatness and glory. The concept of fate, a central theme in Norse mythology, was also integral to Viking dreams and their cultural identity. In the Viking worldview, fate was not a fixed and immutable force but a living, breathing part of the world, one that could be glimpsed in dreams.